Welcome back to our second interview with Lani Forbes, where today we are going to have her talk about marketing strategies and how to land an agent. She is the author of The Seventh Son and the Jade Bones. We got book 1 and book 2. Both are available on Amazon and your local bookstores, and I highly recommend them. Our mission is to give writers the tools necessary to become a published author someday. And with me is Brooke Klontz, and I am Carly Dalton. So Lani, will you tell us what the querying process was like for you and any query tips you have?
Absolutely. I always like whenever someone tells me they're in the querying process, I'm always like, my heart goes out to you, because it's such a difficult part of the process, just emotionally. I think it's very draining. It's very like overwhelming, and it can be a scary thing, just especially with how much rejection you get over and over again. And I think almost every writer can relate to that, that's gone through that process. Like if you're like, oh yeah, I'm in the querying process, we all kind of go, oh, okay, I'm sorry. So for me, I started the querying process probably way too early. So that would be one of my biggest suggestions, is make sure when you finish that book, make sure that it is polished and ready to be in the querying process. I think I ended up rewriting my first chapter a couple times after starting the querying process. And I recommend getting as much feedback as you can ahead of time on the manuscript itself. If you're able to, I actually worked with just a freelance editor who just kind of helped me go through and polish it up just a little bit, just to kind of get it ready. And I think that was one of the best decisions I could have ever made, because I learned a lot. And then it made the book that much better, so that when it finally did get in front of agents, it was actually worth reading, and it wasn't something that they were like, this person doesn't know what they're doing. So my biggest piece of advice is, do not query too early. Make sure your book is ready. We get so excited when we finish that we're like, all right, I want to get it out to agents right now. And that's not always the best case. So you want to make sure that your book is ready. That's kind of the first step. And then you really want to make sure that you research the agents that you're querying, especially because you want to make sure that your agent actually represents what your book is. You'd be surprised. I've talked to my agent, and she laughs so many times about how many times she gets queries for stuff that she's like, I don't even represent that. So do your research. Make sure that if you have a young adult fantasy, that your agent you're querying actually likes young adult fantasy, because that does make a difference. They have to actually like what they're reading in order to make an offer on it. The query letter itself, I highly recommend getting as much feedback as you can. There are so many great opportunities for query critiques. You can get free query critiques. I had won a few at conferences, where a lot of times like they do raffles, or they do like silent auction kind of things, where you can win a query critique from another author or from an agent or editor. And I always highly recommend doing that if you can, just to make sure that your query letter is as good as it can be. I really used the website Query Shark. I'm not sure if that one's still, I'm pretty sure it's still there. It was there like a few years ago when I used it, but it was an agent who literally would just go through queries and just shred them apart. And so as you go through and like read through the archives, it just gives you a lot of really good information about what agents are actually looking for. And some of the most important things are, make sure you have the word count, make sure you have comp titles that actually are relevant comp titles. They don't like seeing comp titles that are like Harry Potter meets Hunger Games, because that kind of tells the agent that you don't really have realistic expectations about your book if you're expecting it to be the next Hunger Games. I mean, maybe it will be, but realistically, the chances are not super high. And so making sure that you're careful about which comp titles you pick, making sure that you include, just the title, which genre, what your audience is, just really basic stuff that you'd be surprised a lot of people don't put in their query letters. And the one thing my agent says she looks for the most in her queries is, you have to have your character with a goal. Your character has to have a goal. There has to be a source of conflict, and there has to be motivation for whatever that goal is. So like kind of that idea of goal, motivation, and conflict, of like, what is your protagonist trying to do? Because every story is about, like I said, transformation. It's about a character who's trying to do something, and it's about growth and change. And you have to communicate that in your query letter. So who is your protagonist? What are they trying to do? What is their goal? What conflict do they meet? And why should we care about this story in particular? So that motivation piece of like, what are the stakes here? Does it matter if this character achieves this goal or not? Those are the kinds of things that they really do look for, I think, in the query letter. and it can be really difficult to put that in a very succinct letter. And that's where getting a lot of feedback can be super, super helpful. I know for me, I won several query critiques. I paid for a few, like there's some where you can pay like $20 and you can get an, like there's a lot of agents actually that offer paid query critiques too. And I know it's like, oh, to have to pay, but honestly, it's, if you really want to do this for a career and you really want to do this traditionally published route, you do kind of have to plan to invest at least a little bit. And so I invested a little bit in some professional query critiques, and I think it really paid off because, like I said, I ended up getting about 8 full requests for the Seventh Son one in the querying process. So, and it starts with those, because I would send out like 5 queries at a time. And then if I didn't get any feedback, I'd go back and edit and try to get more feedback on my query letter, figure out what's going on. And then I started getting partial requests, and I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Okay, so this is good. And then when I started getting full requests, I was like, okay, I think the query letter's good. Now this is just a matter of waiting for the agent that connects with my story in the right way. Because the reality is you can have a fantastic query. At the end of the day, the agent has to connect to it and has to be passionate about it. So there is always that component that you can't really control. But just, I don't know, as soon as I started getting full requests, I was able to stay motivated because I'm like, okay, even though I'm getting lots of rejections as well, I'm getting requests, which means there's something here. So it means you're getting closer. So
awesome. I hope I have that problem.
So one question I have for you really quick, actually, did you use a line editor, a content editor, both?
I used, I think, more of a developmental editor kind of thing, just to make sure that the story was in place. And then the one editor that I did work with, she did do a little bit of line editing just to kind of teach me some ways to polish and strengthen the way that I write it, the way that I wrote a little bit. So she would, like, I have a tendency to use certain words too much. And so she would point out like, hey, you use this word a lot. You might want to go through and search your document and just change some of these. And so that was just a little thing, but it was really helpful. So I mostly did developmental, but then it was helpful to kind of have a line editor at one point, just to kind of teach me some of those more advanced methods that just make your writing that much stronger. And you can get that without hiring a line editor too. Like I said, you can get that through doing the first 10-page critiques, or you can do, there's a lot of great mentor stuff with authors. You can do like pitch wars or author mentor, I forget what it's, author mentor match or something like that. There's a lot of great opportunities that you don't even have to pay for, that can help you learn some of those strategies. And reading books, going to conferences, going to workshops, you learn a lot of that stuff through that too.
What marketing strategies have you found that have worked best for you? And like, what can a new author expect from a publisher getting marketing? Like, is a lot of it coming down to you personally marketing your own book?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to the author, even when you're with a traditional publisher. I think Alexa Dawn does a really great YouTube video on this, where she talks about like different levels in the traditional publishing market, where like if you're more of like an A-list author, that means the publisher is probably going to invest a lot more in terms of marketing into you and your book. Whereas if you're more B-list or C-list, you kind of don't get as much support. So it really depends on kind of where you are at in your traditional publisher's list, I think, to see how much money or support or time they're going to give you. And it is helpful. Like I said, my publisher's done a lot for the Seventh Son to help promote it. Way more than I ever would have thought of. But then there is a lot of stuff that I try to do to support that as well. So I try to stay active on social media. I'm not huge into Twitter just because it scares me a little bit, but Instagram has been one that's been really helpful for me, just making sure that I interact with people when I have opportunities where people ask like, hey, yeah, do you want to be on our blog, or do you want to be on our podcast? I try to say yes, because to me, it's getting involved in the writing community, and it's getting involved in getting out there and getting my name out there and my face out there and my book out there. And a lot of just trying to be visible, I think, has really been helpful. And then just being authentic and interacting with readers. When people message me, I try to take the time to always answer them. I try not to ignore people.
And then like, how do you send out, do you send out any like ARCs or like advanced readers copies or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my publisher does print advanced reader copies for me, and then they use like Otherwise and NetGalley, and they do kind of that promotion where they try to get ARCs out to people and advanced readers. So my publisher actually handles pretty much that whole side of it. And I felt really fortunate because I think with the pandemic, a lot of ARCs have been e-ARCs instead of like hard copy physical ARCs. Whereas my publisher actually still let me do a physical ARC for the Jade Bones, which I was really, really grateful for. So yeah, the ARCs are mostly handled by my publisher, and they kind of pick who those go out to. If you apply through like NetGalley, for example, they kind of handpick who those go out to. And then they usually send me like maybe 10, 15 copies, and then I can try to do a giveaway with some of them. That part's really helpful. And then I always try to do a pre-order campaign. That's a big thing for me too. I think getting some fun little goodies to give out. My publisher does provide like bookmarks, and they made these really cute little buttons for the Seventh Son. I think I've got some back there. They made bookmarks for me. They made book plates. They made, yeah, the little buttons. And then I have a friend who runs an Etsy store that's like a huge Etsy store with stickers. And so I asked her to design like a custom sticker for the Jade Bones. And so I did that as well. But I think having a good pre-order campaign can be really helpful. And then just, yeah, using the community, the writing community, especially like when it's time for a cover reveal. My publisher coordinates with like the Nerd Daily, for example, for my cover reveal for the Jade Bones. So my publisher handles a lot of that, but then I also try to supplement that with asking people that I know or bloggers that I know of like, hey, the cover is going to be released at this time. Would you want to post a picture of it when it comes out? That kind of stuff. So the publisher does do a lot to help, but then I try to do as much as I can to supplement, if that makes sense.
For sure. Are they always willing to post a picture of it, or?
Yeah, it depends. I'm part of one Facebook writing group with some other authors, and they do, a lot of them that I've noticed, they'll do like kind of a street team sign up kind of thing. Well, they'll create a Google form and they'll ask people like, hey, if you're interested in helping with the cover reveal, fill out this Google form and I'll send you the cover, early, and maybe you get a little perk because you signed up for it. And so a lot of people, I'm surprised how many people actually do sign up to do that kind of stuff. And because it's exciting to get to be a part of a cover reveal and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I think the more you grow your audience, the more people are excited to kind of help and be a part of that too. So.
Oh, cool.
Do you sign first copies at all?
I do. Yeah, I try to do a lot of giveaways if I can, which can get a little expensive for me on the shipping side, but I just love doing giveaways and I love getting to bless other people with free stuff if I can. And so, yeah, I've done definitely some signed copies of books. And then if anything, I always include signed book plates in my pre-order campaign. So at least you can stick that in the book if you need to.
Oh, cool. Have you ever gotten like bad reviews off of your books that you had to push aside?
Yeah, and I think everybody gets bad reviews. That's something that like every author has to deal with. It's just a reality of every reader is going to have different styles and preferences, and you cannot make everyone happy. And if you go in with that expectation that you can, you're going to get hurt and disappointed because that's just not how people work. And so I think I read a really great quote that was talking about how like I can write my book and my story and I can put my heart and my soul and my vision and what the message that I want to communicate into that story. But as soon as that book gets into the hands of my readers, they're going to interpret that however they interpret it. And so they may get the message that I was intending, they may get a different message, but that's just entirely up to the reader because it's their own personal experiences combined with what's in the book. And there's really not much I can do about that. It kind of becomes whatever the reader wants it to become once it's in their hands. And so for me, I kind of understand that a little bit where it's like, this was my intent. This is what I'm trying to do with it. And I'm sorry if you didn't relate to it or if you didn't connect to it or if it wasn't in a style that you preferred. Like, I understand that's your right as a reader, and okay, that's okay. It always stings, I think, as a writer. That's why I personally have a policy of not reading my reviews if I don't have to. I have writer friends, or I'll have my husband kind of read reviews and pick and choose what they tell me. just for my own, just for my own mental health and like to get some feedback, because I do want feedback of like, okay, what are some things that maybe weren't working or they didn't like, but I also know that sometimes people just like to be mean and they like to be hurtful for whatever their own personal reasons. And so I just try to protect myself from that just for my own mental health. And that's why I kind of have my husband or writer friends screen reviews for me. And I don't know, to me, that was one of the most helpful pieces of advice I ever got, because it does hurt. And I think because you want to be a part of this community, you want to be accepted. And when you get that negative feedback, it can feel like a reflection on you as a person. And a lot of times it's not. It's usually a reflection on the reviewer themselves. And so just trying to keep that in mind, that like, this isn't a reflection on me. Yeah. But yeah, so I think protecting yourself from some of that is a really helpful strategy that I recommend a lot of other authors employ as well.
So what do you do as a traditionally published author to get like any reviews at all?
Yeah.
Well, I think so, like sending out ARCs is a big part of it. So my publisher will kind of send out ARCs to different reviewers and stuff. And that part, I actually don't have a lot of control over as an author. So like I can ask certain bloggers or people that I may know through Instagram or something to read it and post a review. But mostly I just kind of stay hands off when it comes to reviews. I may say like, hey, if you read it, please take the time to post a review, because reviews are very helpful. But that part's always really kind of terrifying, because there's really not much control you have over that. So you kind of just step back and wait and watch and see what happens.
And hope, cross your fingers that people will take the time.
Exactly.
Perfect. I think we got time for one more question. Brooke, do you have one? I feel like I have so many. I have to think for a second. I think we ran out of the ones that we have on our sheet, but what things did your publisher do for you that was marketing that was helpful? Like, is there anything that they have asked you to do specifically?
Well, I've been pretty fortunate in that I feel like they have, well, one, they've gotten me onto several like blog and kind of bookstagram type tours, which was really helpful. They also arranged like my cover reveal through the Nerd Daily. They try to reach out to some of their connections that they have to do promotional giveaways or promotional posts. My publisher is one of the sponsors at Y'all Fest. And so usually, well, not this year, obviously, because Y'all Fest was virtual, but like the year before, my publisher actually paid to send me to Y'all Fest, and I got to do like a book signing, and we gave away 30 ARCs, and I got to meet and talk to people, and it was really fun and exciting. And so doing a lot of that kind of stuff was really fun. Yeah, or like getting me opportunities to do guest posts on, like I wrote a guest post for hypable.com where I talk about like InstaLove and how everybody hates InstaLove so much. And so getting to do some of those opportunities that I think publishers have connections to, that they're able to, they have these resources and they have the connections that they can get you in to do some of those things, have been really helpful for me. But yeah, I think my favorite thing was getting to go to Y'all Fest in 2019. Yeah, I think it was 2019, because it was right before everything started. And that was my favorite experience. My publisher paid for me to get to go to that and it was my first ever book signing. And I just remember being like, nobody's going to show up, nobody's going to come, and being so scared. And like then having a line that went like totally down the street to get, we were giving away free copies of my book. And so, free books, but I was just touched that I was like, there's people and they want me to sign the book. This is so exciting.
About me. I love that. That's really cool. Were you teaching at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not hard, like juggling the job and the writing and all of these signings and events that you're supposed to do. And
it was definitely challenging trying to balance that with teaching full time, especially with teaching. It's so hard because, I don't know, as a teacher, it's like you hire a substitute teacher and you don't always trust them to do as good of a job as you would with your class. And so it was always really hard for me to be away from my class. And then that's partly why I made the decision to step away from teaching that. And I decided to go back and finish my master's degree. And so that was that, and just like, how much time and energy and effort goes into this, plus being a mom and being in school. I couldn't balance all of those. And so that's when I made the decision to kind of step back from teaching for a while.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever regretted it?
I miss it. I love teaching so much, which is why I love getting to do, I think, this kind of stuff. And I love getting to like do workshops, or I love getting to do conferences. And so I still get to teach. I just now get to teach about writing kind of stuff. Like I'm doing a workshop for young writers, I think next month, where I get to talk about writing kind of stuff. And I still substitute teach sometimes because I do miss it, and I miss the kids and that. So I do still substitute teach.
So before Brooke closes this out, Lani, do you have any like a little golden nugget that's just like stuck with you that has helped you so much in your writing, or a mistake you've made, like any kind of little tip?
Well, I think it's the one that I shared in our previous interview of just, if you can quit, then quit. And if you can't, you're a writer. And so just allowing yourself to have those days or those moments where you're just, you want to quit and you tell yourself you're going to quit, and that's okay. And to just know that you're going to have those days and you're going to have those times where like, this sucks and this is awful and I don't want to do this anymore. And it's okay to let yourself kind of sit there for a little bit. But know in the back of your head that you're not going to stay there. Okay. And so for me, knowing that I'm not going to stay there allows me to kind of sit there for a little bit and be like, nope, that's it, I'm done. And then it allows the creativity to kind of come back in and be like, no, this is part of who you are and you love this and you can't stop. And then I go, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, that's why I'm still going. And knowing that about myself helps me to find that strength and motivation to keep going when stuff gets hard, because this is a very hard career to do. There is a lot of rejection. There is a lot of ups and downs and waitings, and it is a very emotionally challenging journey at times. So having self-care tips, knowing how to stay mentally in a good place through a lot of that. And like I said, giving yourself permission to have those days where you just feel like you want to quit, and that's okay. Just know in the back of your head, it's not going to stay there, that there is hope. You will get through it and you will be able to be more motivated again. Just give yourself a little bit of time if you need it.
I needed to hear that.
I think we all need to hear it.
It's okay. I think we all have it. Even the most successful of writers, I think, have those days where they're just like, I suck. I can't do this. I'm horrible. And then the next day you're like, okay, no, I can do it.
Yeah. Can't give up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lani. I really appreciate you doing this. Everyone, the Jade Bones came out in February. Find it on Amazon and in local bookstores. Please support Lani for doing this. We really appreciate her. Make sure you like, comment, save, subscribe, share. And thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much. And don't forget, book 3 is coming out next February. So hopefully we'll be releasing the cover sometime this summer. So stay tuned.
Oh, that's exciting.